everybody. Welcome back to the Mindful of You podcast. This is episode 64, Live Life on Purpose. So, I am back this week chatting about just a tiny little snippet from my podcast interview with Michelle. She said this line, live your life on purpose, that really resonated with me. And I was like, you know what? How do we do that? How do we live our lives on purpose? Because I do remember having multiple times in my life where I've had this shift where I've become more intentional about what I do, who I want to be. And it's still a process. There are times where I definitely just let life happen to me. But there's also times where I'm so glad that I learned that I'm in charge and I get to live my life on purpose. And there's a difference between that and being like controlling of things that we can't control. And so I wanted to talk about what it means. And so I've got quite a few things here that we're going to get to chat about. The first thing I wanted to chat about, though, is there are very simplified, but there are basically two yous. Or I guess more than two. I said two, but then listed more than two. But there are a few different yous. So there's autopilot you, caveman you, natural man you, and actual you. The actual you is the you with values, hopes, dreams, and goals. Living your life on purpose to me is letting that version of you be in charge. And then practicing a lot of self-compassion when the natural man and the caveman version of you take over, or the toddler in you takes over. So to me, living your life on purpose is letting your highest self be the one that's in charge. So there's a few things that we can do or shift to start living our life on purpose. So first thing I have here is the phrase, why is this happening to me? This is one of my least favorite phrases that I still use, I wouldn't say all the time, but it happens, where it feels like I use the phrase more. I'll tell if I'm complaining to my husband or my parents or something, I'll be like, oh my gosh, the punches just keep on coming, is what I usually say when I'm frustrated with life and I feel like only bad things are happening. And so it's a version of why is this happening to me? And I'm not the type of person that necessarily believes that everything that happens to us is for our benefit. I know that's a little bit of a hot take, but I think some things that happen just kind of suck and we don't necessarily need to find like the benefit of it. Yeah, I do think that most trials do make us stronger and do teach us something, but I also don't necessarily think you always need to find like the bright side. I think it's okay to just let times be rough and keep going anyway, keep living your life on purpose, and then letting that time pass. But the phrase, why is this happening to me, is never, ever helpful. And so it's not a way to live your life on purpose because you're viewing life as like an outside thing that's just happening to you rather than taking charge. My second thing is the belief that you can't be happy because of X, Y, or Z. So when I say X, Y, or Z, I'm referring to different circumstances in our lives. So I can't be happy because I don't like my job. I can't be happy because I didn't get the part at the audition. I can't be happy because my husband is flawed. I can't be happy because my kids are driving me insane, and I think that there are definitely moments where we're not happy, and it's directly related to different circumstances in our lives. But the belief that you can't be happy until like a specific circumstance changes is often not true. But I have this kind of rule of thumb here that is, if you are unhappy with the circumstance, so whether that be like your job or your spouse, whatever it may be, change it or change your thoughts around it. I find that there's so many times that we're just stewing in negativity without any intention to change the circumstance, or without any ability to change the circumstance. Sometimes the circumstance is just somewhat permanent. It's like, this is what it is. I can't change it, at least not right now. And so I better work on my thoughts around it. For example, if you're like close to retirement or something like that, you've only got a couple more years in a job, it might not be realistic for you to go find a new job. Like maybe get your full pension if you stay a little bit longer. In that case, I would say like, yes, technically you can change the circumstance, but you're probably not going to choose to do that. And so if you're frustrated with your job or you don't like it, that's where you have to look at your thoughts around it. I'm also a huge proponent for not all of our thoughts surrounding something we don't like have to be like sunshiny rainbow thoughts. Like it doesn't all of a sudden have to be like, I love this job. I love my boss. Like, that's just not realistic in what I would consider like toxic positivity. But you can usually find something that you do like maybe your job allows for like remote work or something. And so it's like, oh, I love that I get to sit down and make my own lunch and watch a little show during my lunch break. Or I love that I get to go out on walks. And so maybe you still don't even like your job necessarily, but you find ways to still like your life despite that. And then if there's little ways or little things that you do like about your job, acknowledge those. That the negative tends to stand out much more than the positive. And so it takes a lot of work to see the positive in something, and you have to do it in a way that feels realistic to you, that doesn't feel too sunshiny, rainbows and fluff or whatever. And so this obviously isn't just for your job, but any circumstance in your life that you feel is like somewhat permanent, but you're frustrated with it, you have to work on your thoughts around it in order to feel better. There's other things that we just have to work on. Acceptance. There's so many techniques to feel better about different circumstances in our lives. But one of them would be to look at our thoughts surrounding it and ask ourselves if they're true. And if they're true, what else is true that might be a little bit more positive? And if they're not true, what is true? And then maybe just learning to accept, I don't love my job, or I am frustrated with my spouse and have been for a minute, but that's okay. Marriage is hard or can be hard, or we go through ups and downs. It just different things that are also true besides the really negative thoughts ringing in your head. So, other ways we can live our lives on purpose is taking control of some things that are within our control for the most part. So I have 4 different things that we can take control of. And what the first one is to take control of your body. So I am referring to movement, sleep, and food. I talk about this quite a bit, but I have a whole episode I did recently on it, and an interview I did with a weight loss coach. But taking control of our bodies can make us feel so much more in control of our lives. I'm so far from perfect at this. I am very inconsistent with exercise and healthy eating and all of that stuff, but I am much better than where I used to be. And I notice a huge difference. And so you don't have to be perfect at it in order to feel a difference when you decide you're in charge of your body, you're in charge of what goes in it, you're in charge of like what you can like consume, not just eating, but also like shows, books, movies, whatever it may be. You get to decide what you're taking in. The next one is take control of your time. It is very easy to not do this, to let other things be in charge for you, to get lost in like the doom scroll of social media, and all of a sudden you're more of something to be acted upon, and it's like you're just scrolling and scrolling, and all of a sudden time is gone. And I think a big part of taking control of our time is not just having things that we have to do, but also things that we want to do. And when we live our lives on purpose, we have things in our lives that aren't just the must-dos. Like maybe you enjoy hiking, or maybe you enjoy reading, or crafting, or there's a specific show you really like, so you set aside time to watch it. But if we are only doing the things we have to do, that's not a very fun way to live life. There are times in our lives where that happens. In the last episode, I was talking about how I've been getting over pneumonia, and basically all I've been doing is like working. Not a lot of fun things. I still did some fun things, but mostly out of like, I bought tickets, obligation, I have to go type thing. And so there's something really important about letting those times in our lives be temporary, but hopefully for the good times in our lives, or when our higher self is in charge, we have things that we look forward to and enjoy. And I think that helps us take control of our time, because we aren't just ruled by the have-tos, but we also have some want-tos. And so there's lots of different time management techniques that I'm not going to dive into in this episode. But overall, I think just thinking about what you want to do and setting aside time to do it is a great first step. Take control of your self-care. This is something I have gotten so immensely better at, and still struggle with at times, but taking control of like what you're doing for yourself to take care of your body, and not expecting other people to do it for you, or that it will just happen, or that it doesn't need to happen. You have to be the one to prioritize it. Take control of your brain. That's what I am trying to teach you in this podcast. And so I hope you're picking up little things and techniques that are like rewiring your brain a little bit, so that you're the person that's in charge. If we let our brain run amok with like negative thoughts, thought patterns, intrusive thoughts, whatever it may be, it's not a pleasant place to be. And it directly affects our lives. And so taking control of your brain involves so many of the techniques I've gone over in this podcast, but basically your thoughts, and knowing that not every thought that comes through your head is automatically true, and that you get to decide what's true, and you get to decide how you feel about yourself, how you feel about others. So another technique here, or I guess expectation regarding living your life on purpose, is expect days where you do revert to autopilot. I don't think there's people out there who are intentional every moment of every day. That's a very high bar. If there are, good for them. I'm not there, but that's awesome. And so there's going to be times where you're on autopilot, where you're doing the bare minimum, and that's okay. We're just talking about the majority of the time, or even just part of the time as we're practicing, because it feels really good when you realize you're the one making decisions, you're the one in charge, and you're the one that's living your life. Okay. And then this next one is don't assign meaning to everything, especially fear and panic. And so I think a lot of the reason in our brains, like the brain starts to take charge, or the negative thought loops start to take charge, is because the brain is automatically assigning meaning to different stimuli that doesn't necessarily have meaning. It's like if for example, like your coworker usually stops by to say hello in the mornings and they don't one morning, and your brain makes that mean, oh my gosh, they don't like me. Whatever it may be. That's a very simple example, but our brain will assign meaning to meaningless stimuli all the time. And so we can just ignore that. If that comes through our head, we don't have to panic about it. We can just say, we don't even have to say anything. We can acknowledge it and say, maybe, maybe not. That's an OCD technique when it comes to accepting intrusive thoughts. But there are so many things in our life that just don't mean anything, but our brains are going to try and decide that it means something super vital, especially if you have OCD or anxiety. Okay, So we're on to just my last tidbit for living your life on purpose. And this has been the biggest shift for me. I learned this in my OCD program, treatment program that I did for about 3 months. I just finished up with it. And it's so simple, but was so huge for me. And basically, she taught us to just do what you want and go live your life. I think the reason this was huge for me is because with OCD, your brain tries to tell you stuff you have to do or you should do, or else you're in trouble, or else there's something dangerous going on. And I think anxiety does a very similar thing, whereas there's just this fear response to meaningless stimuli that tells us you have to do something about this. You have to figure this out. And when I learned that I could ignore that and I could go do and be who I wanted to be, it has been such a big shift. And I don't do it every day. I wish I did. But I'm doing it more and more where I'm like, you know what? No, I get to decide. I get to decide what I do, not my brain, not these thoughts. I get to decide how I spend my time, what I believe, and how I live my life. And so if you're ever having a difficult time wondering what you should do or how to better live your life on purpose, just remember to go live your life. Get out of your head, get out of fear, get out of anxiety, and go do the things that your higher self wants. Even if there's fear with that, even if it's scary, you go and do what you want to be the person that you want to be. Anyway, I hope that we all can learn how to better live our lives on purpose. I'm so glad that Michelle came to do an interview with me on this podcast. That episode was well loved by many of you. So if you haven't listened to it, go check it out. It should be called like Interview with Michelle Pesnell, or like All Things Therapy. That's what it's called. All Things Therapy with Michelle Pesnell. She talks about more than just therapy. She also gives us some hands-on tips to start living our lives on purpose and different things like that. So go check out that interview if you haven't listened to it. Join me next week because I will be interviewing my brother, Dylan, for the podcast. He also has diagnosed OCD, and I'm going to be talking to him about his OCD journey, the OCD treatment he did, and just different things with that. This podcast has gotten a little more involved in OCD. It kind of goes in waves what we talk about, and that just happens to be kind of the theme right now. And so even if you don't have OCD, I promise there are so many things that you can pick up and learn, and so many people have OCD tendencies even if they don't have the full-fledged disorder. And so come check out the podcast. It's going to be really good, and I'm so excited to interview him. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will talk